This is the story of Michael, the luxury car salesman. He was having a particularly unproductive month, and his boss had only just called him and told him that if he didn't reach that target by the end of this week, which means he had 3 working days to achieve that goal, he would be looking for a new job. So, as he sat by that desk early morning, hoping and praying that a customer would walk in and buy one of the most expensive cars that he has for sale, he lifted his voice up in prayer, silent prayer to God Almighty, say, Lord, if you're really up there, you know I've tried everything. I really need some divine help. Now, at that precise moment, he heard the chime of the door opening, and yes, this young couple comes in. Not that young, but it was a young, attractive woman, and she was with a very handsome police officer. But they were holding hands. So he thought, well, safe to assume she's not under arrest. They're probably a couple. And yes, they were. So they came in, and he offered them some coffee and wanted to know what they were looking for. And they said, look, I know your brand has got 2. One is the mid-size luxury, and then there's the super luxury. We would like to go in for the super luxury. We're not sure we can afford it. That kind of chat. So he said, all right, before we go any further, can I get you coffee? So the gentleman said no. And she says, all right, I'll have a cappuccino. So he says, okay, I'll just get it for you. I won't be a minute. So he goes to make the coffee. When he returns, these 2 are lost in conversation. He didn't want to, interrupt them. So he stood there waiting that they'll notice him, hoping. And then he can't but help overhear what they're talking about. Turns out that the woman was talking to the police officer about the sad condition of her mother. Her mother was in hospital awaiting a leg amputation because she was infected with this flesh-eating bacteria that no antibiotic could cure. In a couple of days, the operation would take place. That was the recommendation of the doctor. Now, our Michael recalled that many years ago, an uncle who was a beekeeper had given him a jar of honey with the words, do not eat, for topical application only. So he asked his uncle at the time, he says, what's the point of giving me something I can't eat? And the uncle said, this honey is of very high antibacterial quality. It's used only in hospitals. So whenever you get a wound or something that won't heal, then you apply this. This is not meant for eating. If you eat it, you'll get an ulcer or something like that. Don't eat it. So he remembered that. And then he thought, hang on, maybe this could be the answer to this woman's problem. And then they noticed him and he said, I'm so sorry. He says, but you all are so well within earshot. I couldn't but help overhear what you're saying. I have this honey. Would you like to try it? Now, as he was telling them that, because that's his instinct, Michael was a good guy. But yes, there were 3 voices in his mind. One was saying, hang on, this is not your problem, is it? 2, if you don't do anything, that lady will definitely lose her leg. And number 3, what if you go out and offer this help and something worse happens? You're dealing with a police officer here. But Michael didn't listen to any of these voices. He just went over and told them that. And he did add, he says, look, I'm doing this. I'm happy to give this to you, but please, I can't be liable in case something goes wrong. And the police officer himself said, well, she's going to lose the leg anyway. Why don't we try this? Of course, there won't be any liability. Where could we please have a little of that honey? And Michael said, okay, tomorrow come over and I'll bring some from home, which he did. 2 days later, they showed up at the showroom. So happy. Great news. The leg has been saved. And needless to say, they bought the most expensive car from Michael. So, what can we learn from this? Customers are not ATMs. There are two kinds of salespeople. I know I'm teaching sales day in and day out. You've got so many companies sending their underproductive salespeople to me. What's the main reason? They're using sales not as an opportunity or as an instrument of helping, but rather as a means to keeping their jobs. That's mediocre salespeople. If you want to be a super salesperson, put the person before the sales.